Hey, what's up guys, and welcome back to the channel. In the recent episodes of Ahsoka, everyone was shocked to see Anakin Skywalker in solid form in the world between worlds. It was so shocking in fact, that it was almost too good to be true. Many theorized that it was perhaps the work of the Ones of Mortis, who had somehow survived the events and deaths of the three of them, with the most popular reigning theory being that Anakin was actually the son of Mortis in disguise. While this theory was proven to be incorrect, it did get me starting to think about the son of Mortis as well as all of the overlords of the world. The whole story and lesson of the Mortis arc is heavily debated and often it is misinterpreted, and this goes back to the fundamental reality of the Ones themselves and their roles within the Force and how their roles are often misunderstood. But the individual that is most misunderstood of all of them is the son of Mortis. As the representative of the dark side, he gets a bad rap and is wrongfully stuck with the label of being pure evil. Yet, although he made decisions and had goals that were morally reprehensible, the son himself was not evil. In this video, we have decided to do a character study on the son of Mortis, starting out with his creation, his ambitions, and getting into why he was actually not evil like Palpatine or the Sith, despite being the ambassador for the dark side of the Force itself. Before we get into it though, we're going to be continuing to cover more of these high concept topics as the new episodes of Ahsoka are released. There are so many more mysteries to uncover and we want you to be a part of it, so if you've been enjoying these videos, consider subscribing. But now, on to the son. The biggest misunderstanding of the son starts with who, or rather what, he actually is. He is the third of the beings known as the Ones. They are incorrectly referred to as Force gods, and erroneously called Celestials, though we'll get into what that is in just a moment. When the Mortis arc first aired, it was believed that the father, the daughter, and the son were the Force itself, or at least physical representations of their respective domains born out of the Force. Most had the idea that they were essentially the gods of the Force, and had total control over those energies. To this very day, some still think this way, but this is incorrect. The Ones are referred to as the gods of Mortis just for easy understanding, but they are not deities, despite the fact that the Night Sisters worship the son and daughter, but that's not really relevant to our point here. The Ones are shown to be quite ancient, powerful, and extremely knowledgeable. It was assumed that they are immortal, but as the father proved, they were not. They have existed for thousands of years, but it's clear that they actually just age much more slowly. The father was getting old and too weak to keep his warring children in line, which was the entire crux of bringing Anakin to Mortis in the first place. However, when they are at the height of their power, it is shown that only the Mortis dagger is capable of actually wounding or killing one of them. At the end of the arc though, the son was stabbed with a lightsaber instead of the dagger, but that was because his power was tied to his father's life, and when he was stabbed with the Mortis dagger, that power left the son vulnerable. So if the gods of Mortis are not actually gods at all, where did they come from? Unfortunately for the time being, this answer only lies in legends. The one are most closely related to the beings known as the Celestials, of whom we unfortunately know very little even in Legends continuity. The only information that exists about the mysterious race of Celestials is that they were extremely powerful beings that had near complete power in the Force. The Celestials enslaved a few species in the unknown regions and built grand structures such as the Centerpoint Station, the Cosmic Turbine, and the Corellian system. They were also the ones who evidently set in place the Great Hyperspace Barrier. The barrier, which is a cluster of stars, gases, and nebula that encase the galaxy, thus making hyperspace travel outside of the known galaxy extremely treacherous and rare. The Rakata Empire were one such slave species of the Celestials before they rebelled. For some unknown reason, the Celestials one day mysteriously vanished without a single trace, and they have never been heard from again. With that said though, one of the former servant species of the Celestials, known as the Killik, had a single elder of their species, named Tharut, who distinctly remembered the coming of the Ones of Mortis. According to the account of Tharut, the origin of the Ones is revealed. According to the Elder, the Ones coalesced and came out of a geyser on an unknown jungle world that was extremely potent with the Force. The only thing that Tharut tells us about the Ones actually is this single quote: The ones are what the Celestials become. This cryptic explanation is the only thing that we can go off of. So basically the ones aren't exactly Celestials, but more like descendants, relatives, or maybe even evolutions of the Celestial race. So although there isn't much to gather, we do have one very important piece of information. They are extremely powerful in the Force as an innate ability, more powerful than any other Force-sensitive species, excluding only the Bedlam spirits, Force priestesses, and the other high-concept beings that are in the lore, but those beings are not flesh and blood. Evidently though, the ones of Mortis are. What's incredibly interesting though, is that it is told to us that the ones did not start out as being representations of the light, the dark, and the balance. They were just incredibly powerful beings that inhabited this Force-rich jungle world, until one day, the son defied his father's direct orders and drank from the Font of Power. The Font of Power was a Force nexus of dark side energy that not only granted him powers beyond belief, but soon, the son became a representation of the dark side itself. The son does not have complete dominion over it, but he essentially was adopted to become the embodiment of it, its representation in the physical. In response, the daughter desired to balance him out and keep him from running rampant with his newfound power, so she also defied the father's command and bathed in the Pool of Knowledge. The Pool of Knowledge was a nexus of the light side, and the same thing happened with her. With both children now warped and consigned to their respective sides of the Force, they took up residence in specific parts of the jungle, beginning a destructive war against one another. The father was ultimately forced to take upon himself the burden of becoming the balance, as he did his best to keep the peace. It is assumed that the Force nexuses of the Font of Power and Pool of Knowledge had a unique effect on the ones, and granted them power because of their celestial adjacent DNA, which is why they turned out to be representatives of sides of the Force. We know that this is unique because when a mortal, the woman who once became known as the Mother, drank from the font and bathed in the pool, the Mother became twisted and mutated by the intense energies and was transformed into the monster known as Abeloth. But anyway, all this is to go and say that the sun is not the dark side itself, but was once a person. This is an extremely important note to keep in mind. What the son actually wanted was not really spelled out for us very clearly in the Mortis arc. He presented himself to Anakin as one who wanted to take an active role in the state of the galaxy by destroying both the Sith as well as the Jedi in order to usher in a brand new era of peace, one that Anakin would later contemplate. While we aren't sure of the legitimacy of his desire for peace, we know that he indeed would destroy the Sith and the Jedi to establish only a small few Force sensitives, only his followers. It's more likely that the son was following the will of the dark side to spread his corruption and warring so that the entire galaxy would be plunged into darkness. This would feed his power and make him even stronger. Another talking point that the dark side promises. We know that this is possible because the daughter even outed him for gaining power from all of the conflict happening between Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Ahsoka. Not to mention he was growing in power because of the Clone Wars. The son got strong enough from this to usurp his weakened father and overthrow him. So if he had been able to corrupt the entire galaxy, or even just a single planet, he would have been unstoppable. But this is only the surface level for the son. It's far more likely that he just wanted freedom. This was one of his biggest grievances that he had with the father. The fact that he wasn't allowed to leave Mortis. He was, in a sense, trapped there. Once he took the throne and his sister confronted him, the son declares that she isn't strong enough to keep him there. That was the goal of all of his plotting, to leave Mortis. Freedom is a basic need for just about any living being, no matter what level of existence they find themselves on. The son's want for freedom likely began as an innocent one, being a nigh-immortal being with immense power confined to a single world for what was essentially eternity, weighed on him heavy. He just wanted to get away of the stress of constantly butting heads with his sister and his father. But that's the thing. Despite all of that, he loved his family dearly. When his mother was pure, a mere mortal, he loved her deeply, and would even obey what was asked of her. The son was more than capable of love, and we see this during his brief moments of clarity. Clarity from the veil of ambition, and darkness that has settled on his mind. The son is a victim of the dark side itself. The Mortis arc is him falling to the dark side. The son is not evil, but simply has his own selfish desires. The daughter even mentions that he can't help but be selfish, ambitious, because it's in his nature. The daughter even implores of her father not to hate the son because of it, but no matter who or what you are, the dark side corrupts all intentions no matter how innocent, noble, or initially pure. Without having the light within a person, the dark side will drag them down. One cannot hope to control the dark side without at least a modicum of the light within them. This is where it becomes important to remember that although the sun represents the dark side, he does not have dominion over it. On the contrary, it has dominion over him. He warred constantly with his sister and rebelled endlessly from his father. He even declared that he hated his father. But none of this was true. It was all a self-deception born from his anger at his family, a misunderstanding that they would never understand him, nor what he truly wanted. He loved his family deeply, and we see this when he has a moment of clarity after killing his sister. He was about to kill his father with the Mortis blade, but the daughter stepped in between them and sacrificed herself. Mortified by his actions, the son looks at his hands before crying out in despair and flying away. He was deeply distressed and wrought with guilt over his involvement with his sister's death, only causing him to sink deeper into the dark side itself. We later get a scene of him entering the daughter's tomb to recover the Mortis dagger. Upon seeing her body, there's a tender moment where we see the son's true self. He mentions that his sister was the only one he ever truly loved, even admitting the irony of it. But even that isn't true, as in his final moments, he reconciles with his father. Once the father stabs himself with the Mortis blade, clarity returns to the son's sight, as he became overcome with emotion at seeing the last of his family pass on. Despite spending a great deal of time trying to kill his father, and even making several attempts on his life, the son spent his last moments begging the father not to die and not to leave him, and the father got to spend his last moments being proven correctly that no, his son was not evil, not at all, that there was still good in him. The father did not want the son to leave Mortis for his own good. The father didn't allow his son to drink from the font of power, doing so because he knew what would happen to him. And he didn't allow the son to leave Mortis because he could see what the son was becoming. In fact, the father was trying to save the son from himself. If anything, the father knew the dark side better than the son ever could, because the son was blinded by ambition and being seduced by the very force that he represented. The dark side twisted and corrupted him to the point where he couldn't even recognize his own feelings towards his family. Not until it was too late. Had the son and the daughter left Mortis, their warring would have caused a violent imbalance within the Force, which would rend the galaxy in half, as all the systems would band together on either one side or the other, tearing itself apart. The ones of Mortis had a distinct influence within the Force because of their intense power with those respective sides. If that happened, the father would be too weak to keep the peace between the two of them. The son would have delved deeper into the dark side by gaining power from the conflict, and he would be completely lost to it. But in the end, even if the son won, he would have been completely remorseful and lost in despair. The Mortis arc details the son's very fall, or rather, corruption by the dark side itself. It is one of the most tragic stories in all of the lore. The irony of it all was that he showed Anakin what would happen to him in the future. All of the while, the son was completely blind to the fact that Anakin's future was happening to himself in that very moment. He was giving away his family for power. But anyway, my friends, this is why the son was not evil and was in fact largely misunderstood, as well as how his story perfectly mirrors that of Anakin's. But now, my friends, we would love to hear your thoughts on this. What are your thoughts on our analysis of the ones of Mortis, and specifically the son? Thank you so much for giving us some of your valuable time today, and always remember that the Force will be with you.